Hello. Lots of people who are learning languages get to a frustration point where they feel they're never going to be able to speak the language. And you often have people who are learning a language asking a question like this. Let's imagine the person is learning French. When will I be able to think in French and not have to keep translating from English, for example? And the problem is that they're suffering from this situation where somebody says something to them and then they have to think out their response in their own language, English for example, then translate it into French and then say the words in French. And this translation process is frustrating, and they believe that the alternative is that instead of thinking the response in English, they'll be thinking the response in French and then saying it. However, I don't believe that's what's going on, because as I'm speaking to you now, I'm not aware that I'm thinking deliberately. There's no time for me to be thinking about what I'm going to say. I just have these general feelings of what I'm going to say, and the words just come out automatically. So what happens is we have some stimulus, which is some input, some words we hear, or some sensations of what we want to say. This is my bad drawing of a brain. Some magic goes on inside, and our response, speaking, comes out. And now people who are asking these questions believe that the magic that goes on when you're fluent in a language is that you're thinking in the language. But let's try some examples. I'm presuming that people here are fluent in English so that this will work. But if I say hello to you, you automatically will likely say hello back to me. You're not going to be thinking, he said hello, so I'm going to say hello, so hello. No, you have this automatic response. So bonjour, bonjour. If you can even speak one French word, you can probably say bonjour back without thinking. He said bonjour, 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 bonjour. No, it just comes out automatically. And it doesn't just apply to single words, it applies to phrases as well. So, how are you? Automatically will stimulate, oh, I am fine, or if I'm feeling a bit sick, not too well, fine or not too well. If you can speak a little bit more French than bonjour, and someone says ça va, you'll be able to say ça va bien, or something like that, automatically. No thinking going on. So, really, the people who are asking this question, when will I be able to think in French? Actually, I believe what they're asking is, when will I achieve automaticity? And that means, according to Wikipedia, you can look this up, competence without conscious effort. That means you can just speak the language. You don't have to think. It's not about how can I think in French rather than thinking in English and translating. It's how can I just have the words come out automatically. Okay. Well, yes. So quite the opposite of their question they're asking. It's not when will I be able to think in French, it's when will I be able to speak without thinking, even in French. And the answer is that you can already do it in French, at least if you know the word bonjour, because you can already say bonjour automatically back. Yes? Over time, you gain automaticity in more and more words and phrases. So in English, somebody says, what time does the film start? You'll say, I don't know. I do not know. Or in French, je ne sais pas. And habitually, you'll contract this so that you'll just say, don't know, or je sais pas. So it just comes out automatically. No thinking involved. Now, one problem is that when you're learning your first foreign language, this process seems like it's never going to happen. And so you can end up learning tens of thousands of words and really studying all the grammar rules and hoping that one day you'll go from zero to hero. And in fact, that doesn't happen. You're much better off practicing until you're sick of it, beyond the level of mastery. Just a few hundred words and a few basic grammar rules until you have them automatic. And then you can add other words in, sort of as icing on the cake. If you wait until you know the whole language, until you feel ready, you'll never be ready. And so, you don't need to know too many words to be able to have an appearance of this, or to not just an appearance, to be able to speak automatically. I know people who can only speak a few hundred words of a language and can hold very decent conversations. And they don't worry that they don't know every single word. They are fluent with what they have. They are automatic with what they have. So my first piece of advice is focus just on a core vocabulary. And although your conversations will be basic, there will always lots of ways of saying the same thing. Become fluent with that, or automatic with that core vocabulary. In fact, in the 1930s, there was a trend for something called Basic English for speakers of foreign languages. And it was discovered that you could hold decent English conversations with 850 words. So people would study those 850 words and use them and phrases which combined them until it was completely automatic, and then could talk all day long. Now again, they were speaking very simply. It wasn't the most sophisticated language, but they could talk about just about anything. You can search for Basic English, the term, and in Google, plenty of articles are about it. And on Wikipedia, there's something called Maximal Basic English, which is bringing together many people's extensions to Basic English in order to be able to have quite sophisticated conversations. And the idea is that you first learn these 850 words, maybe not even all of them, and become very fluent and very automatic in them. And don't worry about all the other stuff. And then over time, you add words from the maximized list and become very fluent in those. So that with a vocabulary, a modest vocabulary of 2,600 words, you can just talk all day in your target language. Yes? And this was a big breakthrough for me in my own learning of Czech, that although I know tens of thousands of words, my active vocabulary that I actually speak is probably quite small, probably only a couple of thousand words that I use. And that's enough. Okay, so lots of idioms as well, saying you learn things like, the thing is, I don't have the time. I'm going to do it, da 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 da. And these things, as well as these words, become chunky phrases that you learn automatically so somebody asks if you want to do something, and you have this sense that you're busy, you just automatically say, I don't have the time, in your target language. Yeah? Je n'ai pas le temps. So, without thinking. Right, so you then use these bits automatically as you're speaking, and people perceive it as fluency. And it is fluency. You're speaking without thinking. But still, even when you're a very seasoned speaker in a language, like I'm very fluent in Czech and speak all day, there are occasions when I still struggle, where I have to think. But you can use that as times for thoughtful contemplation, just as people get stuck when they're speaking their own language. So you could say something like, well, I have to go this afternoon to tell the truth, the surgeon's office, because I forgot the term for surgeon's office. So I used a bit of filler in there for thoughtful contemplation, but it doesn't matter. Because I'm fluent with the core of the language, it's perfectly natural and not painful for other people when I struggle occasionally looking for words. Now, seasoned language learners know this very well. But when it's your first language, reaching this survival automaticity is a real struggle. Because your brain is used to stimulus giving an automatic response in your own language. And when you're learning your first language, you're not just learning that language, but you're training your brain for stimulus to come out with something that isn't your own language. Yes? So seasoned language learners have already trained their brain. So doing this for their second language then, or third or fourth or fifth, isn't painful, or it's nowhere near as painful. It still involves some effort, but it's nowhere near as painful. So this is the brain of, I've put English here, but whatever your native language is, this is the brain of somebody who's just learning their first language. Getting it to stimulus to something foreign is painful. It can take years. But once you've done it for one language, it becomes much easier. Your brain's got over the hurdle. So now, if you hear about some impressive polyglots who have learned some new language really quickly, and then you see them speaking and you go, wow, I've been learning French for 3 years, and he's already speaking really quickly in that language, so I'm useless. No, that person probably went through the same struggles you're going when they first learned French or German or Spanish or whatever the first language is. It probably took them years to reach that level of competence, to reach that unconscious competence of automaticity, to train their brain to be able to have stimulus come out as foreign words without thinking, without a thinking process going on. But once you've gone through that pain in the first language, and everybody goes through it, your brain has been trained and can do it again for other languages almost without effort. Sure, there's some effort, but it's nothing like the struggles that you're going through now. So, my 2 pieces of advice. First, it doesn't matter if your first language is taking you years. That's perfectly normal. Just don't give up. For later languages, it'll be much faster. Second, don't believe you have to learn thousands and thousands of words before you can say anything. It's not going to come by magic. Instead, focus on a core vocabulary and become really good with that core vocabulary. Once you've become very automatic with several hundred words, it's much easier to add more and more words to it. But there's no point in learning the various parts of a hovercraft when you can't say no thank you, I'm not hungry automatically. So stick with it and start with the basics, and for later languages it'll be much easier. And no, you're not going to be thinking in your target language, you're going to be speaking in your target language without thinking at all. Thank you.